This country, without acknowledgement of the African Americans' contribution, was built on the shoulders of these courageous individuals who fought for great ideals. Honor and glory to them all and others who will continue to hold up the torch of justice throughout history's periods of dark despair. Even though the dreams, aspirations, and achievements of the African Americans are etched on walls of segregation and racism, they were not deterred from their mission. War is not pretty, nor is its carnage something to glorify, but wrong it is to not glorify them who fought on those horrific battlefields for justice and the preservation of liberty. Here lies before you the history revealed of these great, courageously daring, and adventurous people and their contributions. More than 175,000 African Americans served in the Union Army. Their numbers represented 10% of the Union Army. Before the close of America's bloodiest war, nearly 70,000 African Americans died in uniform.
Well, we're just at the start of uncovering the story of the black soldier. Except for a few scholars like Dudley Cornish and James McPherson, his story was pretty much ignored. But now historians are beginning to look at sources that they passed over as unimportant. There are all kinds of records at the National Archives, so we're just breaking the ground. Also now African Americans who are descended from black troops who've had these papers in their families finally realize there's an interest in it, and things are going to be surfacing maybe for the next 100 years.
There were 166 regiments of the United States Colored Troops, as they were called, consisting of 145 infantry regiments, 7 cavalry regiments, 12 heavy artillery regiments, 1 light artillery regiment, and 1 engineer regiment. Over 130,000 former slaves escaped Confederate territories and joined the Union Army. The Civil War began without congressional actions concerning Africans being held in America as slaves. Freedom for Africans in slavery was a secondary concern because the issue was an unpopular position for the Union. Abolitionists who sympathized with John Brown favored the use of African American soldiers. They believed that slavery was the cause of war and felt that there should be a crusade against the institution of slavery. Abraham Lincoln's first call for African troops was thought to be too soon. Under pressure from constituents, advisors, and his political peers, Lincoln backed off from the idea. President Lincoln concluded that the idea of Negro soldiers was more productive of evil than good. But that didn't stop Union soldiers from using slaves to ease their own burdens of war. Many slaves at the beginning of war were captured by the Union and were called contraband. They were used as laborers or servants by the Federals. However, outspoken or maverick-thinking military commanders of the Union Army took chances by allowing Africans to fight in battle without congressional approval, like 60-year-old General Black Dave Hunter, who issued an unauthorized Emancipation Proclamation for slaves who fought for him. General James H. Lane was another impatient military leader who included African Americans in battle. Lane even went beyond the wishes of Secretary of War Edwin Stanton. Lane organized the first Kansas Colored Volunteers and allowed African Americans to fight. On March 26, 1863, President Abraham Lincoln changed his position about using African Americans by urging Andrew Johnson, the military governor of Tennessee, to use African American troops, stating, "The colored population is the great available and not yet unavailed of force for restoring the Union." He said the sight of 50,000 armed and drilled black soldiers upon the banks of the Mississippi would end the rebellion at once.
Lincoln, in his heart, disliked slavery, and it took him a while to educate the Northern public to move against slavery. By 1862, they realized that they had to find some way to hurt the Confederacy, and attacking slavery was a way to do it. And as soon as Lincoln saw they would swallow that, then he got the 13th Amendment passed, which ended slavery throughout the Union permanently as part of the Constitution.
Howdy, fellas. Mind if I share your fire? Yeah, have a seat there, man. Oh, did you see those Yanks run today?
Yeah, Bobby Lee had him on the run, didn't he?
I ain't never seen them move so fast.
And they think they're going to improve their ranks by enlisting niggers.
I don't believe it.
Give guns to the niggers?
That's unbelievable.
Why would they want to take a bunch of slaves? Our slaves that are happy on their farms. Have you ever seen a slave that was unhappy?
Never. I ain't never seen an unhappy slave.
Why, they ought to be grateful. We give them a place to stay, a roof over their head, clothes to wear. They should be satisfied and grateful for it, too.
They should be. Oh, Abe must be crazy thinking if the black man can beat us Southern fellas, we can lick any 10 of them.
That's right.
If their white soldiers can't lick us, how does he expect the nigger to?
They must be desperate.
They must be. This old war may be over before we think it is.
After congressional approval, Adjutant General Lorenzo Thomas began organizing African-American regiments in the Mississippi Valley. Thomas recruited more than 76,000 men, which was approximately 41% of all African-American troops.
Y'all know if you're captured, chances are you sold back into slavery if they don't shoot you on the spot. If you're captured wounded, they're gonna kill you.
They have to shoot me, Sergeant. I'm not going back. They have to shoot me. They would have to shoot me, Sergeant. I couldn't go back to slavery back in those. I couldn't go back to a plantation.
Take plenty of them with you. That's all I got to say. Take plenty of them with you. You get caught in that situation, you take them with you.
In August 1863, General Ulysses S. Grant wrote a letter to President Lincoln. It said, "By arming the Negro, we have added a powerful ally. They will make good soldiers, and taking them from the enemy weakens him in the same proportion they strengthen us. I am therefore most decidedly in favor of pushing this policy."
Man, I'm tired of Lando, man. I'm tired.
I'm so glad, man, we got a chance to fight today. I just can't wait till we get a chance to do it again.
Don't worry about it, man. We're gonna give them tomorrow.
We're gonna win this war.
You're right, man. We're gonna win.
We ain't gonna be slaves no more. We're gonna be free from now on. I have to go back in and walk in the, work in the boss man field no more. No more cotton chopping.
Come on, Travis. Right, man. Come on. Get close, Travis. Get him, Travis. Get him.
White abolitionists weren't alone in supporting the use of African-American soldiers. African Americans themselves were also greatly involved in the recruitment of their brothers and sisters. Frederick Douglass, who was once a slave himself, became spokesman for recruiting Africans into the Union ranks.
Frederick Douglass was the leading black abolitionist of the day. He was a newspaper editor. He reached a lot of African Americans. He had a lot of influence. He personally traveled. Lorenzo Thomas went down the Mississippi Valley because there were already a lot of black refugees who had fled to Union garrisons at places like Helena and Baton Rouge and Memphis. And the Union Army had to feed these people anyway. And if they could get some fighting out of them, make them soldiers, well, that would make economic sense as well as military sense. But a lot of important influential people, George L. Stearns, who helped to recruit the 54th Massachusetts, a sympathizer, supporter of John Brown. He too was involved and very active in recruiting blacks. And there were a number of black leaders like Martin Delany and others who also called upon their own people.
Frederick Douglass said, "Once let a black man get upon his person the brass letters, U.S. Let him get an eagle on his button and a musket on his shoulders and bullets in his pocket, and there is no power on earth which can deny that he has earned the right to citizenship in the United States." Frederick Douglass's literary talents were also used in the recruitment of African-American soldiers in newspapers published all across the North. He wrote quotable slogans like, "Men of color, to arms. The iron gate of our prison stands half open. 1 gallon rush from the North will fling it wide open. while 4 million of our brothers and sisters shall march out into liberty.
Fire! Transmit it! Come on!
Frederick Douglass didn't fight in the Civil War because of his age, but his 2 sons, Charles and Lewis, did. Lewis Douglass became First Sergeant Major under Colonel Robert Gould Shaw in the famous African-American regiment known as the 54th Massachusetts. The 54th gained great honor for fearsome battle at Fort Wagner, South Carolina. Even though the regiment suffered heavy losses, their courage and abilities as combat soldiers could not be disputed by anyone who saw them in battle. The 54th suffered 50% casualties at Fort Wagner. But unequivocal victories like the Battle of Honey Springs were also being reported. The 1st Kansas proved their mettle and fought bravely alongside Major General James G. Blunt, who said this about his men: "I never saw such fighting done as was done by the Negro Regiment. They fought like veterans with a coolness and valor that's unsurpassed. Too much praise cannot be awarded them for their gallantry. Besides, they make better soldiers in every respect than any troops I've ever had under my command." Even Union soldiers refused to fight alongside African-American troops. General William T. Sherman said it unjust to brave soldiers and volunteers to place them on an equal basis with the blacks. He said, "I cannot bring myself to trust Negroes with arms in positions of danger and trust," saying this is a white man's war. Many whites feared armed African-Americans would do as Nat Turner and Denmark Vesey, who organized uprisings killing whites for revenge against their suppressors. Union troops did not respect the higher-ranking African-American soldiers. Some openly displayed their jealousy and
I
disrespect.
can't believe we've been fighting this war for 2 damn years. Damn nigger outranks me now. This ain't fair.
We ain't needed their help up until now. I don't know why we need it now.
Well, they can stop a bullet as well as any other man.
Well, let a darky stop it, man. It ain't worth it. I'm just gonna go back home. Been out 2 years. It ain't worth it.
I ain't seen no reason to give them guns. Let them dig the damn trenches.
Yeah, what they're gonna do in the war's over, they're gonna come up to Ohio with us. That's what's gonna happen.
They ain't coming to my place.
Well, I don't want them on my land, but they can sure die for them if they want to.
The African Americans suffered throughout the entire Civil War from discrimination. The Union Army refused to give them equal pay. White troops received $13 a month for private and $21 a month for sergeant major, with an additional $3.50 clothing allowance. African American troops received only $7 a month pay and just $3 for clothing allowance. Nothing changed as far as equal pay until June of 1864.
A lot of blacks were insulted by the fact that they would not be paid as much as white troops, that they could not become officers, at least not as easily as whites, that these regiments would be officered almost entirely by whites. They were conscious of their rights. Some of them said, we're not going to take crumbs from the white man's table. If they want us to risk our lives, I should say, then they should treat us as equals from the very beginning. There were people like Douglass saying, look, half a loaf is better than none. If we go in, if we serve honorably, then they'll have no more excuses for discriminating against us afterwards. So they were still taking risks, putting trust in the white man. And one of the tragedies is that the black soldiers of the Civil War, except for a brief period during Reconstruction, would be denied a lot of the rights and the respect that they fought for. It would wait for a later generation to reap the rewards that they sowed.
Historical documentation shows that African troops were winning honors for courageous actions while their families suffered from poverty at home. Many soldiers wrote letters to their loved ones, vividly describing the hardships of war.
Dear Annabelle, days are getting longer, times are getting harder. Just don't know. But I heard it's good news. I heard pretty soon war gonna be over. I heard the Union troops are slaughtering the rebels. They even let some of us black troops fighting now. They're doing a good job too. Took on the battle of Barry Wagner, we lost a lot of good men. We fighting for our country. I'm just so glad that the war's getting close to being over. I'll be home. When this war's over, I'll be home to see you. It's gonna all be all right. We're doing good. Tide's turning. We're gonna win this war. Well, I'm gonna go to bed and I'm gonna dream about you and think about you and always keep you on my heart. I pray that the Lord will let me see you once again. This thing's gonna be over and everything's gonna be all right. I love you.
African-American soldiers fought without ample battle supplies. Many went barefoot without blankets in the cold of winters, almost naked in some cases, lacking clothing and food. However, morale was strong within the ranks of these oppressed African-American soldiers. Some did choose to desert military duty. Others found consolation in each other. Many African-Americans gained inner peace and strength by singing songs about their bravery and determination. They wanted to see victory, not only for the North, but mostly for their own kindred.
Fremont told them when it first begun how to save the Union and the way it should be done. Kentucky's was so hard and old Abe had his fears till every hope was lost but the colored volunteers.
Out of 3 years of the Civil War, African soldiers participated in at least 39 major battles and 410 minor engagements. At Fort Pillow, Tennessee, on April 12, 1864, news reports appeared about Confederate General Nathan Bedford Forrest murdering 300 troops in cold blood. African women and children were also claimed to be a part of this massacre. These actions by racist Confederates only perpetuated a deep need for revenge.
You hear what happened at Fort Pillow? No, what happened?
It was terrible, terrible.
What'd they do?
Well, they massacred all of us blacks. You know, when we surrendered, they shot us in the back, the men, the women, the children.
Children? Damn Rebs did that?
Yeah, smashed brains, blood all over the place, pools of blood, just mangled, you know.
Pitiful, man. Man, real just pitiful. They sorry.
We gotta fight to our death, man. We can't let them catch us.
We're dead anyway if they catch us.
They won't catch me alive.
What's gonna be our battle cry? Remember Fort Pillow. That's right.
Right. Hip, hip, hurrah! Hip, hip, hurrah! Remember Fort Pillow!
At Poison Spring, Arkansas, a week after the Fort Pillow massacre, correspondents reported about captured and wounded African soldiers being butchered. The 1st Kansas Colored suffered their heaviest losses: 117 killed, 65 wounded.
Men, I know you're fatigued by the long hours of drill, but it is all necessary. The Johnnies will fight you like demons. You have to load and shoot without hesitation, without thinking. I know what it is like. I faced them in the ranks myself for 2 years in the 36th Iowa. You've got to be as quick, you've got to be as cruel as they are. And remember, the Johnnies won't take you prisoner. Remember what happened at Fort Pillow. Remember Poison Spring. If you're wounded, they'll cut your throats. Fight them, it's fight or die.
The Battle of Marks Mill, Arkansas, on April 25, 1864, the Southerners gave no mercy, or no quarter as it was called, to African slaves who were trying to escape to the north and join Union forces. One Confederate soldier under the command of General Joe Shelby stated, "The battlefield was sickening to behold. No orders, threats, or commands could restrain the men from vengeance on the Negroes." Redemption at Nashville on December 16, 1864 came for the African units who participated in the grand assault. Their valor and total disregard for safety in the attack caused the disbelieving Confederates to claim, "We heard afterwards that they, the blacks, had been fed upon liquor until they were crazy drunk." The racist Confederate government warned that Africans caught in uniform would be executed or returned to slavery, but the rebel fury went much further. As one Mississippian stated, "I hope I may never see a Negro soldier, or I cannot be a Christian soldier." We will remember and should remember the battle cry of General Nathan Bedford Forrest at Fort Pillow of "No quarter, no quarter, kill the damn niggers, shoot them down." The policy of the Confederates to murder African American troops did not strike fear in the hearts of African men. It just made them fight more ferociously.
Give us a flag, or free without a slave. We'll fight to defend it as our fathers did so brave. And the gallant Company A will make the rebels dance, and we'll stand by the Union if we only have a chance.
One man did cover the war from a different perspective. Some claim he openly showed his favoritism to African American soldiers. He was Thomas Morris Chester, an African American war correspondent for the Philadelphia Press. He became the only African American to cover the Civil War for a major American daily. Chester was born in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania in 1834 and was an advocate of the Back to Africa movement to Liberia to escape white oppression. He was also involved in the recruitment of African American Pennsylvanians for the 54th and 55th Massachusetts. He served as a captain in a militia company raised in Harrisburg during Robert E. Lee's second invasion of the North. Chester wrote about some of the brave contributions of the African American soldier. South of the Mason-Dixon line, the Confederate Army used many slaves as laborers and servants, but did not employ them as combat troops. However, a regiment was organized in New Orleans but not activated. In 1864, a movement to use slaves as soldiers, giving them freedom for good service, was blocked by the Confederate President Jefferson Davis. But later, nearing the close of war, Davis did consider the limited use of slave combat troops, and General Robert E. Lee agreed that the idea had merit. In March 1865, the Confederate Congress passed a law authorizing that up to 300,000 slaves be called for military service, but nothing was mentioned about them being freed for fighting for the South. The next month, a few companies were organized, but the surrender of the Confederacy came before any of them were used. Much of this history of the African American Civil War soldier must be exhumed from contemporary newspapers about the war years, adjutant generals' reports, the correspondence and memoirs of some of the soldiers themselves. Important details can be found in the regimental and company records on file in the National Archives in Washington, D.C.
A 100 years from now, we won't be talking about white history and black history. When people talk about American history, they'll see all the hues and colors. And we'll have a society where the hues and colors aren't as important. When someone says Southerner or Northerner or American, they don't instantly think white or John Wayne. They'll think of many different people and many different races.
In the last and final months of war, the 25th Corps was organized to consist entirely of African American troops. On April of 1865, the 25th Army Corps helped trap General Robert E. Lee at Appomattox, Virginia, forcing his surrender, which ended America's bloodiest war. The story of the African American Civil War soldier is only the beginning. During the many years that the war existed, African American women such as Harriet Tubman served as a nurse, a spy, and a scout for the Union Army, and Sojourner Truth, an abolitionist whose life involved fighting slavery in search of freedom. These African American women equally gave their lives so that their children would be free and treated with dignity and respect. But this is yet another story that will be passed on about the history of the African people.